Today we'll be covering the basics that go into planning your trip to Walt Disney World. Hello and welcome to the Let's Go to Disney podcast. I'm Oliver.
And I'm Lucy.
Today is Sunday, June 2nd, and you're listening to episode 38, Disney World 101, Planning Your Perfect Trip. Before we get into today's main topic, here's what's going on in the parks right now. All of the construction walls are down at Tiana's Bayou Adventure ahead of its official opening later this month on June 28th. Walt Disney Imagineering shared its second episode of their YouTube series named We Call It Imagineering. Here they shared a major sneak peek into the ride-through of the attraction, and it looks phenomenal. Major spoilers though, if you want to be surprised the first time you ride it, don't watch this video.
I agreed. We were sitting there watching it and I said, oh no, I actually feel wrong watching this.
But it does look great and we can't wait to see it all. In that same episode, Imagineering shared a behind the scenes look at the changes coming to Country Bear Jamboree. So we saw snippets of a fun new spin on A Whole New World from Aladdin by Alison Russell and Christopher Scott Thiel. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And Try Everything from Zootopia by country recording artist Emily Ann Roberts. There's some serious talent being showcased here and we're seriously excited to see the new music at this attraction. All signs are pointing that Rock and Roller Coaster is set to open on July 27th. Good news for those hoping to experience this attraction with trips mid to late summer. Note, there were no significant changes to the attraction during its extended closure, simply routine maintenance. Reminder that June 10th is a big day at Walt Disney World this summer. Communicore Hall and Plaza are set to open on that day. Finally, more walls are coming down and I can't wait to see the whole space come together as a whole. On a side note, I had my wisdom teeth pulled on Wednesday, the two bottom ones, and the last few days have been pretty rough, so I've been on a steady diet of soft foods and pain meds, but it's feeling a lot better today, 5 days after. My cheeks were pretty puffy and swollen, but the swelling has gone down, which is nice. My jaw still feels a little bit tight though, so if I sound a little off today, this is why. According to the dental surgeon, I should be back to roughly 95% in the next couple of days, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
I'm also looking forward to eating something other than yogurt and eggs.
Yes, I don't blame you. I think you've been quite bored with your food choices lately.
Yeah, no kidding. In terms of our next trip, we pushed it back just a touch to the last week of September instead of the last week of August. So pretty simple reason why here. This was going to be the week right before the kids start school. And as we put more thought into it, that week specifically is always crazy busy. So we decided to give ourselves a buffer and we'll go a little later. It'll also be just Lucy and I for this fall trip. You may think we're bad parents for doing this, but the way we see it, our kids get to go once a year and that's a lot more than your average kid. And it's no different than if Lucy and I were taking a couple's trip. Our trip just happens to be at Disney because that's where we enjoy spending our time together. It's our happy place. We don't judge where people like to vacation or how they choose to spend their money, to each their own, and this is ours. Having said that, we're still debating Disneyland or Disney World. We've got Animal Kingdom Lodge booked. We probably would have done Coronado Springs again because we loved it so much, but there was no availability with our time frame, so we booked a standard room at Animal Kingdom Lodge for a very similar price point with the 30% off room reservation for the later summer, early fall savings, and that's a significant savings overall. Mm-hmm. If we do the East Coast, we also booked 2 nights at the Royal Pacific Resort over at Universal Orlando, and we do 2.5 park days over there on the front end of that trip. On the flip side, if we decide to do the West Coast, we have a split stay booked. Disneyland just dropped late summer, early fall savings for the Grand Californian and the Disneyland Resort. Some of those days land in our projected trip, so we would do Disneyland Resort for the first few nights and then stay at Pixar Place for the last 2. At some point in this trip, we would be doing a day at Universal Hollywood as well. Long story short, we haven't decided yet. We're still on the fence. Mm-hmm. Either way, we know we'll have a blast, and it's just a matter of what we're feeling most drawn to this time around. It's a good problem to have, all things considered.
Very true, yes. We'll have to make our decision sooner rather than later, though, I think.
Yeah, because we got to book flights and all that. Yeah, exactly. So with that said, let's get into today's main topic, which is the basics of a Walt Disney World trip. So consistently, some of the questions we get the most often is the very basic questions that go into planning a Disney World vacation. I was on the phone with a friend of ours last week for a while. He and his wife are planning their very first vacation down to Disney World, and they had all the typical first-time visitor questions, things like, this is the time we're looking at going. Is that a good time? How's the weather and the crowds? What types of tickets should we get? Where should we stay? Is it worth staying on Disney property? What's Genie Plus? How does that work? Is that worth it? Should we visit every park? We're thinking of skipping Animal Kingdom.
Don't.
Long story short, it wasn't a short conversation, and I'm sure we'll be chatting with them many times before this trip materializes. But this inspired today's episode. If you've been listening to the pod for a while, you know we discuss tips and tricks for planning and park strategies frequently. But today I kind of want to put all of those pertinent details into one episode that you can refer back to when you need. This will be helpful for first timers for sure, but it'll also help you organize if you've been before, but you're looking for more information to get even more out of this trip this time around. Another friend of mine went with his family in the fall of 2023 and is going back in February 2025. We've linked up a couple times already, and he and his wife recognize some of the mistakes. And, mistakes may not be the right word, but recognize some of the things that they could have done differently or better to get more out of their trip. So today's episode should help with that. Whether it's your first trip or a subsequent trip you're looking to make better, let's make that happen.
So we're first going to talk about when to go. So like we alluded to, when to go is likely the very first thing you are going to decide. And really, the best time to go is what works for you and your family. That may seem obvious, but of course, some people are actually limited on when they can go. This is the reason why the parks are busiest during school breaks and holidays. People are off work and school is done and they're looking to do some traveling.
Yep, 100%.
If you are bound by this as well, then you're still going to have a magical trip, even if the parks are busier or if it's the hottest time of the year in Orlando. We promise you'll still have a magical trip. You may just have to do some adjusting to your plans, figure that all out. So any way you slice it, as long as you are prepared for the projected crowd levels and weather, you are going to be fine. If you do have flexibility, of course, in planning your vacation around a certain time that you want to choose, there are some sweet spots that will benefit you depending on what you're looking for, whether that's lower crowds, better weather. There are better times to be there, and we'll get into those right now.
Yeah, 100%. Starting with January. So this can be a good time to go, save a couple exceptions. So New Year's Day and the couple days after New Year's are always busy. The Walt Disney World Marathon weekend is also January 8th to 12th in 2025, and that always draws heavy crowds. Martin Luther King Day weekend also sees an influx in crowds, so something to keep in mind there. Outside of that, though, mid to late January, the crowds will be on the lower end. Epcot has the Festival of the Arts, which ran January 12th to 19th in 2024, and it's very likely to run similar dates in 2025. The average highs are 72 and average lows at 48, so that can range from comfortable to cold, right? So you should definitely pack pants and jackets, right? So it may or may not be hot enough to swim, so something to keep in mind there. Pools are sometimes closed for refurbishment this time of year, so keep an eye on that depending on where you're staying. And the Skyliner also goes down around this time every year. Okay, so earlier this year was January 16th to 21st, so something to keep in mind there as well if you're staying on a Skyliner resort.
Absolutely. I had two cousins of mine went with their families in January. They are from colder parts of the world, so for them, actually, it was great temperatures, and they were in their pool at the resort a lot. But
and the pools are heated, so there's that. But
some people may find it a little chilly, so it's all going to depend on you and what you're used to. So February can also be a good time as well, especially earlier in the month or at the very tail end. President's Day is February 17th in 2025. And again, holidays draw crowds. It's just normal there. Some schools actually have that week off, so the week following will also have high crowds. You're still in Festival of the Arts time at Epcot. And the weather is similar to January, but maybe slightly warmer. Average high is 74. Average low is 51. The last couple days of the month will be less busy, and that is likely when the Epcot Flower and Garden Festival will kick off. It ran from February 28th to May 27th this year, and again, likely to have similar dates in 2025.
Yeah, agreed 100%. It's usually always the same time.
Yeah.
So March and April will be busy with spring breaks across the U.S. and beyond. Crowds will pick up mid-March and won't let up until after Easter. So this is busy time, right? But crowds during this time will vary somewhat depending on when Easter falls. So Easter falls later in 2025. It falls on April 20th. So the spring break crowds will be kind of drawn out over a longer period. You'll see sustained crowds throughout basically all of March and April. When Easter falls earlier, crowds go way down in the last week of April and into May. Over in Epcot, Flower and Garden will be in full swing. Epcot is beautiful at this time of year with the flowers and the topiaries.
I agree.
It's probably my favorite festival just because of that.
Yeah.
The weather will warm up with average highs of 78 and lows of 54 in March and highs of 83 and lows of 60 in April. We love April at Disney World. It's super mild weather. It doesn't rain as much. It's a really nice time to go. The end of April specifically starts to warm up quite a bit. In short, the first couple of weeks of March and the last few days of April into the first few days of May will be the best in terms of crowd levels. The morning and evenings can be chilly, so a sweater is definitely a good idea.
Absolutely. May is also a really good time to visit. It can be hot, but not overwhelmingly so. The first part of the month usually has lower crowds until Memorial Day, which lands on May 27th this year, and it will be May 26th next year, 2025. Certain schools will let out in the last couple of weeks of the month, so it will get progressively busier closer to June. You will still be in the Flower and Garden time at Epcot until the end of the month, and end of April and early May is some of the best time, if not the best time, to visit Walt Disney World, in our opinion.
Yep, 100%.
That is usually when we will go with our kids. Comfortable, warm temperatures. It's not likely to rain as much as summer and early fall, and longer days makes for awesome park days. Average high temperatures are 87, low 66.
Yeah, 100%.
We had amazing weather when we went with our kids just this past month in May.
Yep. And it was hot.
It was hot.
Like this was the first week of May, right? So the weather was like a hot spell or whatever you want to call it.
We didn't have a stitch of rain, and actually Florida had reached record highs.
Yeah, it was record highs. So it was hot.
For that time of year.
But it was still super nice.
Yeah.
Next up is June and July. So this is summer season in Disney World, and crowds will be consistent during this time. It will be hotter and it will rain often, especially in the afternoon. One thing to highlight for 2024, Tiana's Bayou Adventure, like we said, is set to open on June 28th. So Magic Kingdom will be busy surrounding that day, right, in the following days. 4th of July weekend will draw some heavy crowds, like some of the heaviest crowds you'll see throughout the year. This does bring a special fireworks show and a fun atmosphere. So if you're willing and able to deal with the heat and the crowds, then more power to you. If you need to go at this time and want to avoid the biggest crowds, the first week of June is your best bet. If not, if you're able to hold off until August, crowds will be easier to manage then. Average highs for June and July are 90 and 92, and lows are 72 and 74. It's generally really hot during the day, and it gets more comfortable in the evening and the mornings as well. In recent years, this has also been the start of Food and Wine Festival around the last week of July, but this year it's not starting until August 29th, which is like more than a month than later than recent years. So there's going to be no festival at Epcot throughout the entire summer, June, July, August, which is kind of strange, but there it is.
Yep. Absolutely. So speaking of August, crowds will start to die down, and crowds will be much more manageable in the second half of the month as classes start to resume around the country and beyond. The last 2 weeks of August are a great time to visit in terms of crowds. The weather is the biggest hurdle here during that time, though. It is extremely hot in the parks. We're talking average highs of 91, average lows 74. We've been to Disney at this time, and while the low crowds are really, really nice, it is hot. Like, we're talking unbearable at times.
Yeah, 100%. We were there the first week of September, not last year, the year before. And oh my God, it was just unreal. Yeah. So hot. It's the humidity that gets you as well. Yeah,
absolutely. Walking around the World Showcase, we were just like melting. Yep. It really just was not pleasant at all. And when it's that hot and that humid, it's unreal. You're not even like hungry. Yep. It's not 100%.
I distinctly remember we were at, was it the Fry Basket? And we had the Fry Flight.
And we're just looking at it like, that looks good.
But oh
I don't
my God,
feel very hungry right now.
It was just way too hot.
Absolutely. So frequent breaks, lots of water, light breezy clothes. This is key here. And again, if you're willing to deal with the heat, you will be rewarded with low crowds.
Yeah, 100%. It is quiet at that time. There's no doubt about that. Yep.
So also spooky season kicks off at this time. Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party starts on August 9th this year, which is pretty early.
Yep. It is a little bit earlier than recent years. So September, like we just said, right, not much cooler than August, but the weather does generally get cooler later in the month, getting closer essentially to October. Crowds are generally very manageable for the entire month, really, but there is an uptick at or around Labor Day. So in our experience, this is definitely a less popular holiday when you consider all of them together, and the crowds are still manageable. Highs are 90 and lows are 73, essentially identical to August.
Yeah, absolutely. I find people don't really want to take their kids out of school either when it first has just been back in session.
I think that's why it's so quiet.
Yeah, absolutely. So October, crowds are going to start to get heavier around Halloween time. Food and Wine Festival is in full swing at this time, and this is a pretty popular time to visit Walt Disney World. It gets slightly cooler with highs of 85, lows of 66, and the humidity goes down quite a bit, but it can still actually get very hot in terms of fall weather.
Yep.
So the overall best time to go is September, in our opinion. We get all the fall season benefits and the lower crowds. The only drawback is, of course, the heat.
Yeah, 100%. So November and December is Christmas at Walt Disney World. So decorations start to sprout literally the day after Halloween, like November 1st. And Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party will be held at Magic Kingdom on select nights throughout that time. Last year, there was Jollywood Nights at Hollywood Studios. It's not clear if that's going to return this year, but keep your eye out for that. The beginning of November is busy with the Wine and Dine Half Marathon and Veterans Day not far behind. There is lower crowds like between Veterans Day and Thanksgiving. There's like a sweet spot mid-month. There's also slightly lower crowds the first week of December, but crowds start to swell and peak at Christmas and New Year's. Food and Wine ends November 23rd, and the Festival of the Holidays should kick off shortly thereafter. The weather will be cooler and can be quite cold sometimes, so this is time for pants and jackets. Highs are 79 and 74 for November and December, and lows are 74 and 52. If you want to experience Christmas at Walt Disney World and avoid the highest crowds, mid-November and the couple weeks like after Thanksgiving into the 1st of December will be your best bet. It won't be low crowds, right? So this is not like September quiet, right? But it is lower than the massive influx that you're going to see at Thanksgiving and Christmas.
It's manageable for sure. Yeah. So as you can see, there's lots of pros and cons to going at different times of year. And if you have the flexibility to travel when you choose, it really comes down to what's important to you and your party. And if you don't have much flexibility, it's good to consider for when you will be there.
Yep, 100%. Next thing we're going to cover is tickets. Okay, so it's definitely best practice to purchase your tickets well in advance of your trip. But I'd place less of an emphasis on this since Park Pass reservations went the way of the dodo bird earlier this year. And that's for date-based tickets, which is the tickets that most people buy, right? So Disney World tickets, when you break it down, are actually pretty simple. The vast majority of Disney World guests will purchase date-based tickets. Date-based tickets are exactly what they sound like. You purchase your tickets to start on a certain day and choose how many days you'll want to visit the parks. Depending on the amount of park days you buy, you'll have a set amount of days to use those tickets. They don't have to be consecutive days. To give you a concrete example, if you purchase 4-day park tickets with your start date beginning on August 23rd, you could enter the parks on any 4 days between August 23rd and August 29th. You don't have to enter on the 23rd. Even if your ticket starts on this day, it can literally be any day between the 23rd and the 29th, any 4 days. Another pro tip is that prices are determined by the start date of your ticket. So if the day before is cheaper, it can be worth it to purchase a different start date than the one you need, as long as the date range still lands within your stay. This is a good way to save a few dollars. Multiplied by however many tickets you're purchasing, it could be $40, $60 saved overall.
Absolutely. There's always a good way that you can save. You just kind of have to do your research a little bit.
Yep. So there are 4 types of date-based tickets: 1 park per day, 1 park per day with the water and sports option, which grants you a certain amount of visits to a water park and other Walt Disney World activities like miniature golf, the park hopper ticket, which grants you the ability to hop to any of the parks on each day of your ticket, and then the Park Hopper Plus option, which has the same Park Hopper benefits as the Park Hopper tickets, but also includes the Water Park and Sports option as well. I would say that Water Park and Sports and the Park Hopper Plus are not necessary. If you plan on doing these extras, it's more like cost efficient to pay for that activity a la carte, like basically separately. The vast majority of guests will purchase either 1 park per day or park hopper tickets, right? So another question we get asked pretty frequently is, are park hopper tickets worth it? To that, I'd say for most people, no. Okay. And the reason for this is that if this is your first trip or you don't go to Disney World very often, you can certainly make a full day in each park. And if you purchase park hopper tickets, it's almost like you feel pressured to use the benefit, even if you weren't going to hop or you weren't quite ready to hop or leave that park. And if you really didn't want to, right, you kind of feel forced to do it. Now, the flip side of that is if you do visit more often and you feel like you'd benefit from starting your park day in one park and then finishing somewhere else, well, then by all means, you can make that worth it. But speaking from experience, our first few times at Disney, we didn't have park hoppers or annual passes, and we were fine with that. We did full days in each park and we had a blast, and that was perfect for us. As we started visiting more and more, we didn't feel the need to spend a full day in each park, in part because we knew we'd be back soon, right? So we felt more inclined to do more than one park in a day. So it really depends on how you think you'll actually do the parks. Again, for first timers or people who don't visit often, I'd skip the park hopper option.
Yeah, and when it comes to purchasing your tickets, direct from Disney is definitely your best bet. They will sometimes offer deals for specific groups like Florida residents, military personnel, or Canadian residents, so keep an eye on that if those apply to you. Other reputable third-party sellers like Undercover Tourist also sometimes have offers that may be worth it, but warning here, don't buy tickets from companies or websites you don't trust. We have annual passes, but before we would always purchase our tickets from Disney, so just use your best judgment here.
Yep, agreed.
So aside from the deals with specific subgroups, Disney will also offer special ticket types and discounts as well. For example, right now, you can purchase a 4-day, 4-park Magic ticket starting at $99 per day or $396 for the 4 days. You must visit all 4 parks and can't double any parks. These are good from April 2nd through to September 22nd and must be used within 7 days of the selected start date. They also have a special 3-day, 3-park tickets that grants you access to Animal Kingdom, Epcot, and Hollywood Studios, but not Magic Kingdom. That is key there, not Magic Kingdom. These have to be used within 5 days of your selected start date, and you must visit the 3 parks and you can't double any parks or go to Magic Kingdom. The 3-park tickets we personally think is not worth it for anyone other than locals or people who go all the time, because in our opinion, Magic Kingdom is the flagship park, and if this is your only trip, you should 100% not be missing Magic Kingdom.
Agreed on 100%.
We usually end up doing that one twice when we're there.
Yeah, agreed.
So the 4-day ticket deal is actually really appealing to a much broader audience of guests. So deals are there. Again, it's just a matter of comparing and figuring out what works best for you and your party.
Yep, agreed 100%. Aside from that, there are also annual passes, and there are 4 tiers there. So Incredi Pass, Sorcerer Pass, Pirate Pass, and Pixie Dust Pass. Pixie Dust and Pirate have blockout dates and are only available to Florida residents. Sorcerer Pass has fewer blockout dates around Thanksgiving and Christmas, and again, only available to Florida residents, but also to DVC members. And then the Incredi Pass is the most expensive, it has no blockout dates, and is available to absolutely everyone. Annual pass holders still require park pass reservations as of this recording when entering a park before 2 p.m. If they're entering a park after 2 p.m., they don't need a park pass reservation, except if they're visiting Magic Kingdom on a Saturday or Sunday. So
There's
it's
a few
still
rules, yeah.
It's still pretty convoluted there, but annual pass holders are generally pretty aware of these rules. To enter Magic Kingdom on the weekend without a park pass reservation, they basically need to have a reservation to another park, have entered that park before they hop to Magic Kingdom. So they also have good to go dates where they don't need reservations at all. And that's on the annual pass holders website.
Yeah, if you're not a pass holder, you wouldn't be looking at that calendar.
Yeah, there's no reason to,
So our next topic we're going to talk about is where to stay. This is obviously a very significant decision when it comes to planning your trip down to Disney World. And the first thing you should actually probably determine is your budget of where you want to stay.
That'll give you a good
where
idea,
you want to stay.
a good starting point,
So once you have an idea of how much you're willing and able to spend on accommodations, you're going to be able to narrow down where you stay from there. So broadly speaking, you have 2 main options when it comes to your stay. You're going to stay on property or off property. There are pros and cons to both, and we're going to highlight those here. So if you're staying off property, you've got a ton of options in the area. There are many, many hotels, rental homes, Airbnbs, VRBOs, etc. There's so many options out there. These are going to range from modest to luxury, and you can pay a little or you can pay a lot. It's important to read reviews and do your due diligence when you're looking at off-property locations. So typically speaking, you're going to get more bang for your buck in terms of space and luxury when you stay off-property. And you're certainly going to pay a premium if you choose to stay on property. I've known some friends who have stayed in like Airbnbs. They've got their own private pool. I mean, there's definitely benefits there for sure staying off-property. Big pros are that you can usually get more space for less money depending on what you book. You could have access to a full kitchen and save on meals so that you can at least cook your breakfast and have some dinners. Some places have access to a private, semi-private pools, like we said, and among other perks, there's plenty of them. Cons are you're going to have to drive to the parks, whether you have your own vehicle or a rental, and you're going to have to pay for parking at the parks, which is $30 a day.
Yeah, which is not a deal breaker, right?
No,
but it's just something to keep in mind. You do have to pay for parking, and that does add up.
Some people kind of forget that, so we thought we'd like to mention that.
Yeah, 100%. If you choose to stay on property, there's again a lot of choices here. So before we get into the Disney proper hotels, there are good neighbor hotels all over Disney property. Okay, so there's over 40 of these. These hotels offer proximity to the resort, but are not owned and operated by Disney. Some will offer perks and transportation options, but these vary by property, so make sure you're aware of which perks are available to you depending on where you decide to book. Most offer some type of transportation or shuttle to the parks. About a quarter of them offer early theme park entry as well. Specifically, Swan and Dolphin, Swan Reserve, and Shades of Green also qualify for extended evening hours. So basically the same as deluxe resorts, right? So that's a pretty big perk. The Swan and Dolphin and the newer Swan Reserve are literally just across the street from each other, and they're great alternatives to the Disney hotels. There are walking distance to Disney's Boardwalk area, Epcot's International Gateway entrance, and Hollywood Studios. They all offer all of the same perks as the Disney hotels except for transportation and the ability to book dining at 60 days for the entirety of your stay. Of note, the shuttles for Magic Kingdom from these good neighbor hotels, Swan and Dolphin included, all drop off at the TTC, okay? Only Disney proper buses and minivans actually drop off like at the front gates to Magic Kingdom.
Yeah, that's a good note for sure. We stayed at the Swan Reserve. We really liked it. It was a very nice hotel.
Beautiful.
Don't get us wrong. It was wonderful to be walking distance to Hollywood Studios and to Epcot. But for us, there's just always something about being on it's just missing that
Disney magic.
Little Disney magic that you're looking for sometimes. So if you choose to stay on Disney property or in a Disney proper resort, again, you've got a ton of options out there. For Disney resorts, these are very popular and they book up fairly far in advance, especially for the more popular resorts. Reservations for the following year are usually released late May, early June on average, but they actually are released much earlier this year. So you're going to be able to book a 2025 vacation as we speak. Oftentimes, Disney will release discounts as your travel dates draw near. So, for example, there are hotel discounts being offered as we speak. Right now, you can actually save 30% on your resort hotel when you stay 5 nights or longer, most nights between July 8th and October 3rd. So if you had booked your stay months ago and a discount is released later, you can and should contact Disney to see if these savings can be applied to your existing reservation. If your dates are included in the deal, the vast majority of the time you'll be able to do that. Another thing to watch closely as well is that often Disney will imply long stay or stays of certain nights in the advertisement, but the savings will also apply to shorter stays. So it's definitely worth clicking on the link and then reading the finer details. Always read the finer details.
Yeah, agreed, 100%, yeah.
So, for example, for the deal we just mentioned, the savings apply to stays of 1 to 4 nights as well, just the savings drop by 5%. These deals are kind of hard to find on the website, but from your browser on the main page of the Disney World website, under Places to Stay tab, scan all the way to the bottom of that menu, and you're going to see a link for View Special Offers. This is where you're going to find all the current deals, both tickets and resort deals.
Yeah, 100%. They don't make it easy to find, but once you find it, you'll know where it is, and then you'll always know where to look.
Yeah.
But it's definitely good to be aware of where it is so that you can check back periodically to see if there's any savings that have been released after you've booked.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now let's get into if you choose to stay in a Disney proper resort. So this comes with several perks. Early theme park entry, you'll be able to enter any park 30 minutes before official opening. You'll be able to book individual lightning lanes at 7 a.m. compared to park opening for non-resort guests. You'll be able to make dining reservations for 60 days plus every day of your resort stay for up to 10 days. You'll have access to Disney transportation from your resort. You'd be able to use your Magic Band to make charges back to your room. And if you're staying at a deluxe resort, you'll have access to extended evening hours at select parks on select nights. These perks are nice, and only you can determine if they're worth it to you and your party. In terms of Disney resort selections, you've got over 20 to choose from at different price points. So Disney categorizes their resort offerings in 3 tiers: value, moderate, and deluxe. Value resorts are typically in the $200 a night range, sometimes more during busier times and sometimes less. There are family suites at these resorts that are more expensive but are larger and can accommodate more guests, so something to keep in mind there. As a principle though, these are less expensive, they have the least amount of amenities and dining options, and they also have the least amount of transportation options. But make no mistake, they are still great resorts. They qualify for all the perks except for extended evening hours. Art of Animation, Pop Century, All-Star Movies, Music, and Sports are all value resorts. And Art of Animation and Pop Century are also on the Skyliner line, and that's a huge plus for these resorts as well.
Huge plus, I agree. They have actually a really good Skyliner. It's amazing.
Yeah, and Art of Animation is such a cute resort. I love the lobby there.
We took the kids there just to kind of wander around, and they both fell in love with it.
Yep, agreed, 100%. The moderate resorts are the mid-tier, so they are more expensive, they offer more amenities, more dining options, but are on par or sometimes worse for transportation options. So they range from the higher 200s to $400 range, depending on location and time of year. So for example, the Grand Destino Tower rooms at Coronado Springs are always a bit more expensive. These resorts are Coronado Springs, Port Orleans, Riverside, and French Quarter, Caribbean Beach Resort, and up until recently, it included the cabins at Fort Wilderness, which are now being converted to DVC properties. And the top tier are the deluxe resorts. These offer the most amenities, the most dining options, the most transportation options, and of course, the highest prices. Okay? So these range from the mid $400 range to upwards of $1,000, depending on the room category and the time of year. These have all the perks, including extended evening hours. Some resorts are more expensive, like Polynesian, Grand Floridian, Riviera, and some are less so, like Animal Kingdom Lodge. Some of these offer really close proximity to the parks, right? So the Polynesian, Contemporary, Grand Floridian are all on the monorail loop, so super close to Magic Kingdom. Boardwalk, Yacht and Beach Club are steps from the International Gateway entrance, and you can also walk to Hollywood Studios from them. And they are still phenomenal resorts. In a separate category, you'll also have the DVC resorts like Saratoga Springs, Old Key West, Riviera, which are dedicated DVC resorts, but they can also be booked by regular guests. So these deluxe resorts also have wings that are dedicated to DVC, like Bay Lake Tower at Contemporary, the villas at the Polynesian, the villas at the Grand Floridian, Copper Creek and Boulder Ridge at Wilderness Lodge, among others. So really, they're the same as the deluxe resorts and they offer all the same perks. It's splitting hairs, right? It's just a different booking category.
Yeah, absolutely. And last thing we're going to mention on the deluxe resorts is renting DVC points. So there's no denying that staying in a Disney proper resort is expensive, and the deluxe resorts are even more so. But a way to stay in the deluxe resorts at a discounted rate is to rent DVC points. So to keep this simple, it works like this. Disney Vacation Club is Disney's timeshare system. DVC members will buy into the program at a home resort of their choice and by purchasing a set amount of points that they will receive every year. They can use these points at their home resort or at any other DVC property. They can also borrow points from future years and bank from previous years, but they can only do this once. Some DVC members who know they won't use their points and don't want to lose them will rent them out, meaning that they will book a reservation on your behalf and you will pay the owner an agreed amount per point to stay in the deluxe resort at a heavily discounted price than what you would have paid rack rate through Disney. Now, obviously, unless you know a DVC member intimately and would trust to do this, it can be sketchy. It's a nerve-wracking process.
Yep.
So third-party companies such as David's DVC Rental exist as the middleman. They protect DVC owners and renters and ensure a seamless transaction. They don't sponsor the show in any way. We've talked about this before, but we have booked David's DVC Rental with our own money to stay at the Polynesian and the Wilderness Lodge, and both times we saved several $100s for a total of well over $1,000 for 2 stays, and both times the experience was flawless. Definitely something to look into if that piques your interest.
Yeah, agreed 100%. Like, we don't have enough good things to say about David's DVC, and it's not a plug, right? Like Lucy said, they don't sponsor the show. Mm-hmm. It's a service that we've used to save money, and it's legit a good experience. Yeah. So if you want to explore that further, check out their website. You can definitely find some savings if you're willing to go that route.
Yeah, you just have to be prepared to pay the full price.
Yep, which is nice, right?
Yep.
Like, it's not necessarily a bad thing because then it's paid off and you don't have to worry about it.
True.
Right?
And then when you go on your trip, hey, that was already well long and paid for.
Yep. So again, just something to consider. Mm-hmm. Next up is dining. So before COVID times, you could actually make your dining reservations 180 days in advance, which is really kind of overkill. Yeah. And I prefer the current 60-day window that exists today.
I do too. You're almost getting into that. You're into that sweet 2-month spot where you're getting so excited. So to book your dining reservation at that point,
it's just more reasonable. Yeah. It's sometimes hard to figure out where you'd like to eat 2 months in advance, never mind 6 months out, right? So if you were planning within the 6 months, you were already behind. So definitely, I think it's more reasonable nowadays. Yeah. So we talk about dining on the podcast pretty frequently, but here are the nuts and bolts when it comes to dining at Walt Disney World. So dining reservations open to everyone at 60 days before the reservation date. If you're a Walt Disney World resort guest, you can book dining at 60 days, plus all the days of your resort stay for up to 10 days. To give you a concrete example, if you were staying at a Disney resort from September 21st to 28th, 60 days before September 21st, your reservation window would open. You'd then be able to make reservations for September 21st and every day up to September 28th. This is a huge advantage because your only competition at this time is the people who have vacations at the exact same time as you do. The more popular reservations definitely book up at 60 days. So think Space 220, Cinderella's Royal Table, Topolino's Breakfast, Ohana, Storybook Dining at Artist Point, among many others. It's in your best interest to book these later in your booking window. Think later days of your vacation, because even less people will have access to those days, and you're much more likely to get the restaurant you want at the time you want. To put this in practice, your resort reservation must be linked to your My Disney Experience account. Exactly 60 days before your check-in day, your reservation window will open for all of the days of your stay. Reservations go live at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, but they have been known to drop a touch early, so it doesn't hurt to get up like 10, 15 minutes earlier and be ready to go. Mm-hmm. You might be wondering, is this necessary? And the answer is yes. If you have your heart set on a hard-to-get reservation, it's definitely a good idea to book at 60 days as soon as possible to up your chances of getting the reservation you want, right? So the harder reservations, 100%, make no mistake, they will go quickly. So you want to be on top of that. Having said that, if you're not able to get the reservations you want, all is not lost. You can always check back periodically, and some reservations do open up as people change plans, especially in the days and sometimes hours leading up to the dining time. Also, some restaurants will offer walk-up wait lists. So if you're willing to wait on the day of, you may be able to get in that way as well. There are also paid services like Mouse Dining that will send you alerts when a reservation that you're hoping for opens up. They have free or paid services. Again, something to consider if that interests you. Another quick thing to note here is that special experiences also open up at 60 days. So think Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique. Oh God, that's hard to say. Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique, right? So is super popular and will book up at 60 days. Building a lightsaber at Savi's Workshop, right? That's over in Hollywood Studios. Keys to the Kingdom tour and similar tours, all of these open at 60 days and they book quickly as well. So if you have a princess that really wants to do the bibbidi bobbidi, right, be online at 60 days before check-in to maximize your chances of getting that experience that you want booked up.
Absolutely. Next up is transportation. So there's a couple of things to consider here. Do you need to fly into the Orlando area? The vast majority of people will fly into MCO or Orlando International Airport. When you're booking flights, you can usually do so 11 months out for most airlines, but the best prices are generally around the 3 to 4 months before travel and will get progressively more expensive as your travel dates draw near. If you're flying into the Orlando area, you'll have to figure out a way to get from the airport to your Disney resort or wherever you're going to be staying. There are many car rental companies at MCO where you'll be able to rent a car if needed, but note that you're usually going to pay a premium for picking up at the airport. So if you qualify for any discounts or preferred pricing with your credit card or loyalty programs, make sure you're taking advantage of those. And if you won't be renting a car, you have several options. Mears Connect, driven by Sunshine, is a shuttle service that joined last summer. It used to be 2 separate companies. There are private car services that are also available, so do your research as these will vary in quality and price. And then, of course, you have your ride shares like Uber and Lyft or just a traditional taxi. Mears Connect, driven by Sunshine, is a good option. It's $32 round trip per adult and $26 per child. So this starts to actually get kind of expensive, though, the larger your party is. An Uber or Lyft will be somewhere between $50, sometimes more expensive during surge pricing and sometimes less. A taxi to the Disney Resort area is around $65. Private car services can be actually around a couple $100. So really, you have multiple options here. It's just depends on what your needs are and your budget. We always choose to go with an Uber. We like the convenience and the speed. When it's just Oliver and I, it is so easy and quick. And we usually travel with carry-on luggage. So we're just kind of in and out. We like to just go. Let's get to the parks.
Yep.
And even when we have our kids, we actually just bring our compact booster seats. Away we go in the Uber. It works for us every single time.
100%.
If you're renting a car but staying at Disney properties, you won't have to pay to park at the resorts or the parks. But if you're staying off property, parking is $30 per day per park. So something to keep in mind there. And if you're planning to stay on property and utilize Disney transportation, which is extensive and really convenient, it's not necessary to rent a car. If you want the flexibility to come and go more freely and will be visiting other places in Orlando area during your stay, renting a car definitely would make sense. Again, your mileage will vary depending on how you structure your day.
Yeah, 100%, right? So what it boils down to is just having a plan as to how you're going to get from the airport to your resort. Once you're at your resort, how you're going to get around. Do you really need a car? Do you not need a car? Having that all laid out essentially before you go is just going to make sense, right?
Absolutely. Like for us, we are the type that we want to get to the bubble, the Disney bubble, and stay in the Disney bubble until it's time to go. But that's not for everybody.
Yeah, 100%. It depends on what you're looking for, and that's totally fair.
Absolutely.
With all that said, this is the basics that go into planning your trip to Walt Disney World. So one thing to note here is that if this is your first time planning a trip to Disney, or if you haven't been in a long time, there is a steep learning curve, and it's not super straightforward in like terms of planning, right? There's much easier vacations to plan, and this is not it. You do have to be aware of several things to really get the most out of your vacation. If you love to research, or you have someone in your travel party that loves to research and they love the planning process and they'll do it gladly, then more power to you. That's me and our family, right? I love planning. Before our first trip to Disney, I had spent hours, if not days worth of watching videos, reading articles, listening to podcasts, all about planning a trip to Disney. Of course, you don't have to dive that deep into it if you don't want to, but the more informed you are going in, the better your vacation is likely to be. If you don't want to invest the time and effort that goes into planning a vacation, it can 100% be worth it to utilize a travel agent that specializes in Disney vacations to help you out. The caveat here being that it's a Disney specific travel agent, right? So if you use a generic travel agent, they may know some things about Disney, but again, you'd like to have someone who has been there and goes regularly so that they can really help you get the most out of your hard-earned dollars. So if you're going to the travel agent route, be selective.
With that being said, thank you so much for joining us today to talk Disney trip planning.
If you haven't already, find us on Instagram and TikTok at letsgo.2disney. We share reels there and more tips and tricks and some humor as well. We're also on Facebook. Our page there is Let's Go to Disney.
Also, we would love if you could subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It would be greatly appreciated. This helps us reach more listeners, and we love helping people have great trips.
Have a great day, and we'll see you real soon.